Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. There are a record number of Indigenous candidates for the 2021 federal election, representing ridings from across the country. At least 77 of the candidates identify as Indigenous, according to the Canadian press, and at least 23 of those running are First Nations, the Assembly First Nation says. For more, I am joined by McGill University lecturer and University of Alberta PhD candidate Chadwick Cowie. He is also from the Mississauga community of Hiawatha First Nation. Chadwick, thanks for joining us today. What does the number of Indigenous candidates running say to you about this year's federal race?
In regards to the number of Indigenous candidates running, because there's 77 running, and obviously we saw in 2019 62 and about 50 some in 2015, it shows that the number is increasing and there's more awareness and a willingness to necessarily look at as participating in Canada's federal elections as a way of being able to make change. However, how far that goes and what that fully entails is another question.
Now, many of the ridings have more than one Indigenous candidate running against each other. What's the significance of that?
So in ridings like Nunavut, where you would expect each party to have an Inuit candidate, especially because of the high population of Inuit people in Nunavut and the fact that it is one of the four regions of the Inuit, it's expected that that's the case. And there's also an understanding in some other ridings like Northern Saskatchewan where it's understood that in order to win those ridings, you need an Indigenous candidate to be there, especially for the front-runner parties that tend to run there. Okay,
so what about the other ridings? What are their chances there?
So this is the other thing. So although there are 77 Indigenous candidates, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis candidates running, some of them, yes, are running against each other. So we obviously know only one will actually become the winner in that riding because of the first past the post system. But then we also have to look at where those other candidates are running. And for a lot of them, they're running in ridings where their party of choice that they are seeking to win for do not have a chance to win. So if we look at, for instance, a Liberal running in rural Alberta who is Indigenous, they don't necessarily have that very high chance of winning against the Conservative incumbent or a Conservative candidate because the numbers tend to be more in favor of the Conservatives. Or if, say, an NDP candidate is running in an area that tends to be very dominant towards the Liberals, such as we see Mike McLeod in Northwest Territories, the chances of winning in that riding is going to be very low because he's well-liked, he's well-understood, he's well-connected to that riding. So although there's 77 candidates, we have to really consider how many are actually going to win. We saw in 2019, yes, there are 62 candidates, but we only saw 10 Indigenous MPs elected. In 2015, we saw 11 elected compared to the 10. I know a lot of media and a lot of individuals think that there was only 10 elected in 2015, but there's actually 11 because we're actually forgetting Randy Boissonnault, who is also non-status Cree in that riding. His family was adopted out a long time ago. But so we actually saw a decrease in the number of Indigenous MPs in 2019 compared to 2015. And again, that's also because we need to take into consideration where these Indigenous candidates are running. And in a lot of cases, many of them are running in ridings for a party that has little chance of winning that district.
So, Chadwick, how would an Indigenous candidate help advance Indigenous issues if they are successful?
If they're successful, we need to take into consideration, are they actually going to be at the table when it comes to decision making? So are they going to be in cabinet? So depending on whether or not it's a Liberal, Conservative, NDP government, how many of those Indigenous people are going to actually be at the center of the table where they're actually making decisions and moving forward? What ministries would they hold? How influential will they actually be able to have in that, especially convincing their parties and their party of choice that it's important to keep the Indigenous vote coming out to vote for them. That's very key for actually being able to get people out. So what it could actually mean is, depending on who's elected, for the region, we saw obviously Ethel Blond and Andrew had very good, strong impact representing Northwest Territories from 88 until she lost in 2006, bringing forth that voice that needs to be for the Northwest Territories. But we also need to remember, as an Indigenous candidate, it does not necessarily mean that they're going to represent all Indigenous people. That's a blanket term. We're various different nations. There's over 50 different nations and confederacies that we have to take into consideration here. So how that individual gets elected and what they're actually going to represent is, again, another question that has to be fully assessed. Are they connected to their nation or community and the region that they're actually coming from, or are they someone who has blood relations but doesn't necessarily have the connection to the ground, the ground community that we would actually be wanting to see them connected to in that district as well?
All right, definitely a lot to think about over these next few weeks. Chadwick, thank you for taking a few minutes to speak with us.
Thank you very much for your time.
And we will bring you coverage of those ridings and more coming up on our election night coverage on September 20th. Now, housing is a major priority for many in this upcoming election, including party leaders. The national housing debate took place Tuesday evening in partnership with Vote Housing, a national nonpartisan campaign. Vote Housing aims to get Canadians to pledge to vote housing in the upcoming federal election and ensure all political parties support investments in affordable housing and ending homelessness. Representatives from each of the 5 major political parties discussed and debated their party's vision and approaches to addressing affordable housing and homelessness in Canada. Our very own Dennis Ward was a co-moderator for this debate.
Vote Housing is a national campaign designed to raise key issues of housing affordability and homelessness during this election. Led by the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association, the Canadian Lived Experience Leadership Network, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, and the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, and with over 15,000 supporters and over 200 endorsing organizations, Vote Housing is one of the largest electoral coalitions ever put in place to draw attention to housing.
If you want to watch the full debate and hear what the party members had to say, you can visit the Vote Housing website at votehousing.ca. And Newfoundland and Labrador RCMP are investigating the sudden death of an Inuk person known as a tireless advocate for Indigenous rights and justice. Angel Moore reports.
Family members have confirmed to APTN News that DM Saunders, formerly known as Delilah Saunders, was found deceased in Happy Valley, Goose Bay yesterday. After the 2014 murder of their sister Loretta, DM became part of the Family Advisory Circle for Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. Also a water and land protector, Saunders participated in a hunger strike protesting against the Muskrat Falls hydroelectric project. Saunders advocated for changing organ transplant policies after they were denied a liver transplant in 2017 after some personal struggles with addiction. Known to many people as an inspiration, DM will be greatly missed. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabukduk, also known as Halifax.
All right, we have to take a short break, but still ahead, a new report claims Indigenous resistance has played a major impact on stopping or delaying greenhouse gas pollution in the United States and Canada. Stay with us.
Live from Gatineau. Don't miss the federal leaders debate. Trudeau, O'Toole, Blanchet, Singh, Paul. The party leaders face off about Canada and its future. The federal leaders debate. Commercial free. Thursday, September 9.
Welcome back. A new report claims Indigenous resistance has played a major impact on stopping or delaying greenhouse gas pollution in the United States and Canada. The report comes from the Indigenous Environmental Network, a coalition of Indigenous grassroots environmental justice activists. For more on this, we are joined by the IEN's Dallas Goldtooth. Dallas, thanks for being with us. This report says Indigenous resistance to fossil fuel projects has had a major impact on the environment. Can you tell us about what the report found?
Yeah, I appreciate it. The Indigenous Resistance Against Carbon report examined how much fossil fuels has been stopped due to Indigenous resistance across what is so-called in the United States and Canada over the past 10 years. And through evaluating 25 different frontline fights that have been led by Indigenous peoples, we've shown that our struggle for free, prior, and informed consent, our struggle to recognize Indigenous rights to its fullest degree, has stopped or delayed over a quarter of these countries' greenhouse gas emissions. And what it proves is that Indigenous rights, by recognizing Indigenous rights, we not only hold ourselves to a higher standard of society, but we are protecting Mother Earth at the same time.
Now, of course, the Keystone XL pipeline appears to be dead once and for all, and there is resistance happening on Trans Mountain and Enbridge's Line 3. But what were some of the other frontline fights that Indigenous people played a major role in?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, a lot of us know like these big marquee fights like Trans Mountain, like the Trans Mountain Extension Line, Keystone XL. But there are so many different struggles all across the map where Indigenous peoples are stepping up in defense of the sacredness of Mother Earth and the water. Fights like the Tech Frontier mine, it was a huge successful campaign to shut down that mine up in the tar sands. You have the protection of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge up in Alaska and northern Canada. There was a number of fights down in Texas in the Gulf Coast region. You know, the Texas. People say that Texas is the Alberta of the United States, or the vice versa. It goes back and forth. I mean, it's the heart of the fossil fuel industry in the United States, and there's Native folks right in the heart of it who've been fighting different forms of extraction and pipelines and export facilities there for generations. And so this report vindicates those efforts and really shows that we are not alone, and that the strategies that we're seeing executed by frontline land defenders and water protectors does and is having an impact.
So how were you able to come to the conclusion that Indigenous resistance has stopped or delayed greenhouse gas pollution equivalent to at least 25% of annual U.S. and Canadian emissions?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'm not a scientist. I helped make sure that we're addressing the right frontline fights in the big picture, but we ran the data, and there's a difference between natural gas and oil, right? Those are obviously different things. But what we did is there is a greenhouse gas emissions equivalent where we can gauge them equally about how much greenhouse gases they're putting out. And so we looked at all the different projects and went off the numbers the corporations were giving us and said, like, okay, Keystone XL was proposed to send over half a million barrels of oil a day. So we ran the numbers and said, okay, how much greenhouse gas emissions does this equal? And that's how we came up with the information for the report. And we went across the board of all these different projects and just ran the numbers. And it's pretty significant. I mean, billions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions has been stopped due to Indigenous peoples.
All right, Dallas, we'll have to leave it there, but I want to thank you again for taking a few minutes to speak with us today.
Wopi Tataka, thank you very much.
A well-known Alaskan master carver is in the Yukon, helping a First Nation there carve a traditional Tlingit canoe. As Sarah Connors tells us, there's more behind this impressive canoe than just beautiful woodwork.
In Haines Junction, the smell of cedar fills the air. After 2 months of work, this 30-foot-long dugout canoe is being turned right side up. It's cause for celebration. This is Alaskan master carver Wayne Price's 13th dugout. He was hired by Champagne and Ajiac First Nations to teach the ancient Pacific Northwest Coast art form to a handful of apprentices. The red cedar was sourced from Prince Wales Island in southeast Alaska. It's estimated to be 450 years old.
The western red cedar gave its life for us to take it, bring it here, carve it, and work on it, and give it a new life.
These dugouts are a source of healing. Several years ago, Price struggled with addictions. During his recovery, he says the Creator told him to make healing dugouts.
The Creator said, as we're carving the dugout, each chip represents a life we've lost to alcohol and drugs in Indian country. And of all the chips that come off the dugout, there won't be enough.
Price says this dugout is healing for those struggling with addictions, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the discovery of children's graves at former residential school sites. He says this wood is powerful medicine for those in pain.
I've seen many miracles for being at the helm of a master carver digging dugouts. The Creator told me it would work, and it does. I've seen it work. I've seen it work a lot. So I'm not afraid to say that I'm changing some lives. Yeah, most definitely.
Apprentice Loris Patterson-Smith is one of those people. He's from the Carcross-Takish First Nation and never learned the ancient tradition until now.
Really important in our culture to know this type of stuff, and it's something that's slowly disappearing, but with Wayne traveling around and teaching everybody, I don't think it will disappear now.
He says working under Price has inspired him to pursue his passion for carving.
Starting on this job, I think it really pushed me towards carving. I think I'm going to continue it.
It's satisfying, like just seeing like the grain come down, seeing each chip fall away, and yeah, it's fun.
Champaign and Ajiac apprentice Jay Reed barely carved before working with Price. He's pleasantly surprised by how much progress was made in such a short span of time.
From having like all of us some of us have never touched a knife before, to building a canoe is pretty insane.
He says working on the dugout helped him reconnect with his Tlingit heritage.
Well, there's so much history in canoes. Like, it's been a part of like the coastal life. Like, every day was for the canoe, basically. Like,
building a dugout like this takes time, and there's still much to do. Price and the apprentices will finish as much as they can this week before the dugout is stored for the winter. Next spring, Price will travel back to the Yukon to finish the job. He and others will then travel on the dugout from Haines, Alaska to Juneau for a Tlingit gathering and celebration. The apprentices have also committed to going on a long journey with Price on the dugout they helped create.
It's been proven to me many times that the Pacific Northwest's culture and art has been our ally since for 10,000 years in time immemorial. Why should we ever doubt it? It's going to take care of us today, take care of us tomorrow, and into the future as well.
Can I get a hoo-ha? Hoo-ha! 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 Hoo-ha!
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Haines Junction.
All right, we need to take one final break, but before we do, here's APTN's Lee Wilson with a preview of what he's working on in BC.
I'm Lee Wilson. Coming soon, we will have a story from BC of Jessica McCallum Miller, a young Gitxsan woman who says she resigned from the City of Terrace Council due to racism.
Some very derogatory comments made by a city councillor that was my colleague about surrounding First Nations. And I became irate, I became upset. The rest of council was very complacent with this behavior.
She is now supporting an Indigenous candidate running for a Puskupi council seat after several councillors resigned because of racially insensitive social media posts from their mayor. This story soon on APTN National News.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Once again, our viewer Lori Bunting sent us this photo from Sinaiks territory west of Kootenay in British Columbia. That is a gorgeous photo. Thank you, Lori. Send your photos to share@aptn.ca and then tune in each day to see if it is our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over in the east, 24 and a mix of sun and cloud in Charlottetown and 24 and rain in Fredericton. 16 and rain in Nain and 18 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 24 and rain in Quebec City and 24 and rain in Montreal. Rain and 20 in Toronto and 19 in North Bay. 17 and a mix of sun and clouds in Big Trout Lake and 19 in Sioux Lookout. A mix of sun and cloud and 19 in Thompson and 21 in Norway House. 24 and a mix of sun and cloud in Winnipeg and sunshine and 25 in Brandon. Sun and 31 in Swift Current and 29 in North Battleford. 22 and a mix of sun and cloud in La Ronge and 20 degrees in Buffalo Narrows. Moving over to the west, 19 in rain in Fort McMurray and 15 in rain in Peace River. A mix of sun and cloud and 27 in Red Deer and 30 in Lethbridge. 20 in rain in Campbell River and 21 in rain in Bella Coola. Rain and 16 in Dease Lake and 17 in Fort Nelson. 18 in sunshine in Mayo and 16 in Old Crow. Sunshine and 15 in Norman Wells and 15 in rain in Wrigley. 13 and sun in Colville Lake and 12 in Fort McPherson. 9 in Baker Lake, and 0 in Cambridge Bay. -4 in Resolute and 0 degrees in Arctic Bay. Tonight, APTN will be airing the French language debate, where the leaders of Canada's 5 major political parties will square off in the hope of capturing undecided voters. Here with us now to set the scene from Montreal is Tom Fenario. Tom, thanks for joining us. Obviously a big day today. What can we expect from the debate tonight?
Thanks for having me, Daryl. Well, oddly enough, tonight is not the first debate. Last week on the popular Quebec network TVA, all 5 of the major party leaders met to have a debate about all sorts of issues. Unfortunately, lacking from that debate was Indigenous issues. AFN Quebec Chief Josette Picard said that the current federal election campaign is going around in circles and going nowhere. However, there will be a whole section devoted to Indigenous issues on tonight's debate. All of the parties will be discussing platforms. The Liberals will be pushing housing for First Nations, ending boil water advisories. The Bloc Québécois, interestingly enough, want to end the Indian Act. The Green Party wants the Pope to apologize for the residential school system. The NDP would like to implement UNDRIP. And the Conservatives would like to end mass incarceration of Indigenous peoples in Canada. So all sorts of pertinent topics expected to be discussed and debated tonight.
So, Tom, what is at stake tonight for all these party leaders?
In a nutshell, the polls are really close. The Conservatives are leading just by a bit. However, if you break it down by the ridings, it looks like if the election were to be held tomorrow, the Liberals could take it as a minority government yet again. So essentially what is at stake is the very fickle mistress of national politics, Quebec. We've seen it before in the past. In the 1980s, Quebec swung to the Conservatives under Brian Mulroney. In the 2010s, the NDP Orange Wave under Jack Layton. And then in the last election, 2019, the surprise resurgence of the Bloc Québécois. How will Quebec vote in this coming election? Nobody really truly knows, and we'll have some of it might be dependent on the outcome of the debate tonight.
Now, you're producing both a pre and post debate show tonight. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we're going to have a pre-debate show which will sort of discuss all the party platforms, and then we will have the debate itself. And then afterwards we will have the post-debate show where our guests will join Sylvie Amboise, our host of Nouvelle Nationale d'APTN, and they will discuss all the comments, anything that had to do with Indigenous issues or things that are obviously of importance to everybody, like climate or the economy, will be discussed in depth. And one thing that is extra cool, if I can go off on a bit of a tangent here, we will also have this the debate broadcast in Innu on APTN East. We will have it broadcast in Eastern Cree, I should say, on APTN North, and we'll have it on Ojibwe and APTN West. And of course, all of these languages will be available online. So if French isn't your jam, that's cool. We got you covered in all sorts of Indigenous languages here on APTN.
All right, Tom, we'll have to leave it there. Plenty to look forward to tonight, and thank you for taking a few minutes to speak with us.
Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate it.
That's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. Make sure to watch the French debate tonight on APTN. The pre-show gets underway at 7:30 Eastern, followed by the French debate from 8 to 10 Eastern, and we'll wrap up tonight's French debate with a post-show right after the debate. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.